of our forum. So if the two State Board of Education candidates would like to join us via video now, great, thank you. So candidates joining me right now are from the State Board of Education, 5th District. We have Christina Collins with us, as well as Lisa Woods. So again, I'd like to give you some background information about the State Board of Education. In Ohio, the State Board of Education is made up of 19 members, 11 who are elected and 8 who are appointed by the governor, all for 4-year terms. Their role is to function as a citizen's voice, serving as an unbiased broker for education decision-making, focusing on the big picture, articulating the long-term vision and needs of public education, and making policy based on the best interests of the public. So with that, we'll go ahead and start our forum with our first question, and I will start with Ms. Collins. Why did you decide to run for State Board of Education, and what makes you qualified?
Hi, so just thank you for having us, by the way. So just some quick background about me. I am an educator. I've had 12 years in education. I do have a PhD in curriculum and instruction. I also have a superintendent's license. I've been a district administrator and a high school English teacher. I'm also a mother of 4 small kids. And what makes me qualified for this position, I think, is all of that experience, but also having a lot of expertise in actually implementing the policies that the state puts out and the resources that come from the Department of Education. So the reason I decided to run now is because we're in a really key, opportune moment for our public schools and our school system as a whole, where we could really start to rethink our system and maybe do some things differently. So I'm interested in being a part of that conversation. I'm innovative, I'm a problem solver, I'm a collaborator, I'm a team player. So I'm interested in bringing all of those things to the State Board of Education.
Thank you. Ms. Woods?
Thank you, and thanks for having me tonight. I was actually asked to run a little over 4 years ago, and it was quite a surprise that I went ahead and gave it a shot. And now that I'm there, I really love it. I'm a mom. I have 5 children. Have had some struggles in my life, and I know what it's like to be on the receiving end of the policies that we, now put in place at the Ohio Department of Education through the board. So it is my passion to serve in this way and to be a voice for parents and families, also for the teachers, superintendents, and the whole teams that are involved in education. And I support, all the forms of education. I actually, out of 5 years, out of 5 children, have had my kids in public education for 20 some years now, and still have 2 more. I have a son that's 16, and had tried. Oh, thank you.
All right. Next question. What challenges to our public, vocational, charter, and private school systems do you hope to address? So again, what challenges to our public, vocational, charter, and private school systems do you hope to address? And we'll ask Ms. Woods, you can go ahead first now.
Thank you. I think the compliance issues and our accountability that our schools are facing can be tough, and we have to really look at those and say, are we getting what we want out of accountability? Are we really measuring what education in a true way? And I think all of our schools have issues of the compliance, and that has to be looked at very carefully so that we're really getting what we need and not overtaxing our districts.
Thank you. Ms. Collins?
I think honestly, all of our school systems are in a constant reactive situation. The legislation that comes out from our General Assembly is just constant, and it's constantly changing. And our schools, none of our schools have an opportunity to actually implement anything before something else is changing. I use graduation requirements as a perfect example. Those have changed 5 times, 6 times in the last 5 years. So our schools can't keep up. And what they need is at least a representation from the Board of Education members to know what they should really be focusing on. What do the laws actually say? What do they actually have to do? And what's the minimum that needs to be implemented so that they can keep moving? Because they're, like I said, they're in a reactive situation, and they can't get ahead. Our school systems can't get ahead.
Thank you. Okay, let's go to question number 3. Do you believe a public funding system is adequate for our school system? Again, do you believe the public funding system is adequate for our school systems? Ms. Collins?
I do not. It has been made clear, especially in this situation where our schools are trying to fund personal protective equipment to respond to the pandemic requirements, that our schools do not have enough funding. And our public schools saw their funding cut again in May and had to retain those low funding levels. I also think that we have some inequities happening with funds leaving local public school districts to charter schools. So local taxpayer funds being reallocated to charter schools or to private schools through Ed Choice vouchers. I would like to see our public schools funded appropriately. Now, I understand that that comes from the General Assembly. That's not something that's within the purview of the State Board of Education, but it's important that any member on that board knows that funding inequities exist and knows that that is a very essential part of any conversation about our schools.
Thank you. Ms. Woods?
That's right. It's really in the hands of our legislators, but we can advocate to them as well. And I have been involved with the Cup-Patterson funding changes that they had hoped to make. Unfortunately, that hasn't gone anywhere. I've seen several different things that they have tried to put through, and we really are hoping to see something different, because once they make those changes, then we'll change the policy to fit those changes from the House of Reps.
Thank you. Next question. How can the State Board of Education address the inequity between wealthy school districts and poor school districts? Ms. Woods?
That's a tough one. Again, there's funding issues that we have had our hands tied with, but also the accountability issues. I think that we have to drill back down to our standards as well, without making a swinging pendulum, which has been very difficult. It's hard to make changes in education because every time we do, they do have to react to it. And so making simple changes and kind of drilling down is very important. We have to get down to our core mission, which is our basic fundamental education. And sometimes I think we go too far reaching into other areas. And our kids really need to read well. They need to know their math facts. And I think we should focus on those when in all of our schools and make sure that we're doing those properly.
Thank you. Ms. Collins?
I think that it starts with advocacy work. So being a voice on the state board that represents that those inequities exist. You know, there used to be a legislative committee on the State Board of Education that had a direct contact and communication with legislators. And I'd like to see that come back so that so legislators are able to hear from people who are representing education at the state level. Just as a quick example of something that I've noticed in, for example, the strategic plan with the state, which the State Board of Education approves, it emphasizes the use of digital technologies for state assessments, but it never recognizes that the digital divide is one of the biggest inequities in the state of Ohio. So yes, that's great that we're going to talk about digital technology and testing, but we need to also recognize that that is an extreme difficulty for a lot of districts in Ohio.
Thank you. Next question. What is your view of the education voucher system in Ohio? Again, what is your view of the education voucher system in Ohio? Ms. Collins?
A few other candidates and I actually did recently a session on this with a presentation from the League of Women Voters, actually, Susie Kaiser. And my view on vouchers is that they are taking significant amounts of funding from our local public schools. Cleveland Heights, University Heights, while not in District 5, is a great example. It stands to lose $9 million this fiscal year to voucher programs. So that is detrimental to those kids who remain in the school system because it causes cuts in programs, cuts in teaching staff, cuts in counselors, things that the kids who are staying behind need. So essentially, to me, if our state wants to fund all of these different school systems, traditional public schools, charter schools, private schools, then we need a different funding system that does not cause our traditional public schools to lose that amount of funding.
Thank you. Ms. Woods?
Again, the voucher issue is something that's handled by the House of Representatives, and we have a lot of work to do there. I see the strain that it puts on the public schools, but also there's parents that are not finding the needs of their children for special schools, and we have a lot of autism, different types of special needs, and those schools need to be funded as well. And those children need help in those areas. And it's tough for parents when there's nothing close by. So it's a tough go. I really don't know what all we can do there.
Thank you. Next question. How should paraprofessional and other educational support positions be protected if brick and mortar schools close with a round 2 of COVID-19? Again, how should paraprofessional and other educational support positions be protected if brick and mortar schools close with a round 2 of COVID-19? Ms. Woods?
I'm not sure I understand that question. I know you repeated it twice, how that they would be protected against what?
Their positions be protected.
Because of the
school closes.
schooling?
Yeah, if the brick and mortar of the school closes, how would those support positions be protected? Or how should they be?
If those positions are still needed and they can do it through virtual, like we're doing this meeting today, and I believe that's what is happening. It's a little tough. It's a little tough. Maybe some visitations through libraries or whatever, if it's one-on-one with students.
Okay. Ms. Collins?
So in my most recent position, we had this exact conversation, and I kind of served as a liaison with both our teachers union and our classified union. And I know that as soon as all of this started, we were having conversations pretty quickly about we know what the contract says, we know what the job descriptions are in the contract, but if those jobs don't exist anymore, what could we put in place that maybe a different job that we could agree to, that we could come to some agreement on. So it's a lot about collaboration and having those stakeholders there. You know, there were crazy ideas like, let's get some of the painting done in the building. And it really just depends on what do the parties agree to. What we did find was we had our, and I say we, it was my previous position, but we had paraprofessionals who were making the phone calls when kids weren't checking in to do their work. They were doing a whole lot of that. But again, what can we agree to? How can we collaborate to come up with a solution?
Thank you. Next question. With many students still not having laptops and internet service available to them to study remotely, how is the State Board of Education addressing the equipment shortages and broadband issues statewide? So again, with many students still not having laptops and internet services available to them to study remotely, how is the Board of Education, State Board of Education, addressing the equipment shortages and broadband issues statewide? Ms. Collins?
So state board members have the power to convene, which for me means that I would work with ESCs to pull stakeholders together, be it community members, administrators, teachers, parents, whoever I can to try and come up with solutions to those problems. There isn't a policy that can solve that problem. Again, there's advocacy, there's voicing opinions, you know, the CARES funding that the state received, ensuring that funding went to help those schools that needed digital access. I mentioned the digital inequities previously. You know, the CARES funding initially was going to be a matching grant, meaning that districts needed to come up with money to match whatever the state was going to give them. How is that fair? That's not solving the problem, because if the districts had the money to support that in the first place, they would already be supporting it. And it ended up being that the CARES funding didn't require matching grants. So I think pulling people together, problem solving, again, that advocacy piece, that's really important for the state board members to be doing.
Thank you. Ms. Woods?
I would agree with most of that. And also, there are parents out there that are begging for things to be done on paper again. There's a lot of problems with the security of our networks. There's kids that are literally getting hooked on pornography, seeing violent videos, and it has caused a lot of problems. And so first, I hope that we can fix the problem we have with a secure network for our kids to learn safely on, because we know that parents can't helicopter and watch everything that they do. Believe me, I know firsthand with my own kids, it's very difficult when they have the devices at home and can get tied up, you know, watching videos or whatever, and next thing you know, they still haven't had their homework done. So
Thank you. Next question. Should private schools participating in school choice programs be subject to testing requirements? And if so, what kind? Should they be rated the same as public schools? So again, should private schools participating in school choice programs be subject to testing requirements? And if so, what kind? Should they be rated the same as public schools? Ms. Woods?
that's a very good question. First of all, our testing is a mess as it is. There's a huge need to do an overhaul on how and what we test for. I do think that we need a consistent measurement that shows from school to school and some type of continuity that people will understand how they rate next to the public school and so forth. But again, that's also drilling down to the standards, which seem to be a little, how would you put it? Prescriptive, thank you, sorry, I get nervous doing these things. And with that, again, I don't think most parents understand what their kids are being tested on.
Thank you. Ms. Collins?
My short answer is yes. Whatever that system is that applies to the traditional public schools should also apply not just to private ed choice schools, but also to charter schools. And actually that data does exist. The most recent data, though, I think that's on the Ohio Department of Education website is from 2018. And when you do look at that data, what you can see is even the color coding system is somewhat skewed. So on the public school report card, green means that the public school has met 80% proficient. That's that indicator line. On the ed choice assessment, green means like 40%. So you look at that and the two still are not comparable. Yes, they need to follow the same accountability systems. And I think the caveat also has to be made clear to everybody that neither charter schools nor private ed choice voucher accepting schools are required to accept all students like traditional public schools are. So they get to pick and choose which students they want to take. And only 15% of students with disabilities are in either of those systems in the state of Ohio, which is way lower than our traditional public schools.
Thank you. Next question. Are all Ohio school districts using the same standardized testing? And do you think state test scores are important indicators of student and school district success? So again, are all Ohio school districts using the same standardized testing? And do you think state test scores are important indicators of student and school district success? Ms. Collins?
I think as far as the indicators and whether they are important indications of student and school success, I think that the entire standardized testing system depends on the question of who is the traditional public school accountable to? Is it accountable to the state for achieving whatever the state sets as the scores and the indicators on the report card, or is it accountable to its community? Because if it's accountable to its community, then what the community cares about may not be an indicator on that state report card. Whether or not my kid goes to school and loves learning and comes home and tells me all about all the stuff that she learned that day, that is never going to be measured. It's never going to be on a report card. What was the first part of that question again?
Are all Ohio school districts using the same standardized testing?
And all Ohio school districts are using the same standardized testing. Unfortunately, it's in the spring, so it does absolutely nothing for kids that are in that grade that year. There was supposed to be a fall diagnostic test included in this new testing regime so that you had an idea of what to do with those kids. That never happened.
Thank you. Ms. Woods?
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. Are all Ohio school districts using the same standardized testing? And do you think state test scores are important indicators of student and school district success?
So the first answer is yes, and the second is no. The indicators are not what we should be using. The testing isn't done the way it should be. Some schools talk about the MAP testing that they like very much because and others like STAR, where they can do quarterly testing and get feedback immediately so that the teachers can help their students and know where the problems are. And that's not what's happening. By the time we get the data back, the students are already gone out of that class, which is very unfortunate. So we really need to make some serious changes.
Yes, Ms. Collins?
I just want to expand on that a minute. The MAP testing and the other testing that's along the way, when I mentioned very quickly that the original, when we switched testing regimes, we were supposed to have a fall diagnostic. When that didn't happen, schools put a lot of those assessments in place, and MAP testing is very expensive, but a lot of schools did purchase it because they have to make sure along the way that they are prepping kids for that state test. So I would really like to see more emphasis on that along the way, what is informing the instructional decisions kinds of testing, than this one high stakes test where a student who didn't eat breakfast that day, may throw off a school's score on their report card.
Thank you. Next question. How do you feel about the importance of vocational education opportunities across Ohio schools, and do we have enough? So the question again, how do you feel about the importance of vocational educational opportunities across Ohio schools, And do we have enough? Ms. Woods?
Thank you. Vocational schools and our vocational classes, whether they're in in the public school or vocational schools, are very important. There's a lot of kids that are hands-on learners, and they really excel when they get in that environment and find something that they want to do and can dig into. I'd like to see some more vocational type classes in younger years, like junior high. Bringing back the wood tech, metal tech is very important. And also, you know, I have a lot of parents that talk about home ec, things like that. You know, there was back when we were in home ec, when we were kids, it was valuable back then, but more so now because parents are both working, and there are kids out there that don't know how to read the back of a macaroni and cheese box.
Thank you. Ms. Collins?
No, we do not have enough vocational education opportunities. One of the things that I did as a curriculum director for the last 8 years was try to do at least every 2 years, we did a survey of all the kids in the school, and we did a survey of the teachers, and we tried to find out what is it that the kids want to take, and what is it that our teachers want to teach, and how can we put those things in place so that our kids can get things that they really want. So in my most recent position, we brought in home improvement and mechanical engineering and all of these cool classes that kids wanted to take. We had a teacher that was excited about it, and that is like the secret sauce for success, is to get them in these classes that everyone's excited about and teach them some skills that are leading them where they need to go. So we kind of, you know, we set aside, we knew what the graduation requirements were. We were trying to figure out pathways to meet those graduation requirements, but within doing that and meeting the letter of the law, how can we offer those fun kinds of opportunities that get kids going in a direction? So it's very important to me.
Thank you. Okay, last question. What is your plan for maintaining contact with the constituents you will be elected to represent? So again, what is your plan for maintaining contact with the constituents you will be elected to represent? Ms. Collins?
I already push out my phone number. I made it a Google Voice phone number so that I can still maintain some semblance of a home family life when I need to just be with my family. But it is important to me to just be accessible. You know, I don't know the solutions. I don't know, you know, what all problems are occurring. I don't know that stuff. And it takes getting that constant feedback to help form opinions and think about things and get more information. And that's just the way I operate. The more different perspectives I can get, the better I can figure out, you know, my thoughts on a topic. So that phone number, my email, you know, I'm going to go out. I plan to be able to go to the ESCs, to go to the board meetings, to go meet with the parents. I am a parent, so I get that piece as well, and just being available and as available as I can be.
Thank you. Ms. Woods?
Thank you. Yes, being available is very important. Our phone numbers are on our on the department board page, and getting back to the emails and calls is very important. Also getting out to public forums. There's a plethora of opportunity out there with many different types of groups to get out and speak. And I get out to everyone that, you know, calls me in.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you so much to the candidates who joined us this evening for the State Board of Education, 5th District, Christina Collins and Lisa Woods. Again, thank you for all of you who are attending this evening's candidates night. We'd like to thank Zach Berkey for being our Zoom producer this evening. And please remember to vote on Tuesday, November 3rd or before then, or by mail. Thank you again for joining us, and have a good evening.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much.